What is going on, everybody? Today we're going to be comparing two, I would say, pretty hype shoes in the market right now, and those are the Adidas Adizero Evo SLs versus the Nike Zoom Fly 6. Now, both of these shoes are designed to run a little bit faster. We're going to get a little bit into the specs as we compare them, starting out with both of the outsoles. Quick disclaimer also, I did pay for both of these shoes 100% out of my own pocket. Even though I am wearing a Nike hat and a Nike shirt, I'm going to be as non-biased as I can. So let's get right into it. So like I said, we're going to be starting out with the outsole of both of these shoes. On my right, we have the Nike Zoom Fly 6 outsole, and on my left, we have the Adidas Adizero Evo SL's outsole. And as you can see, they are quite different looking patterns. On the left, we have the Adizero Evo SL's outsole being a full-length continental rubber outsole from Adidas. It is a very flat outsole. Now, what I mean by flat is that there aren't a lot of ridges or patterns on the outsole. It's just one thin, smooth slab of continental rubber that Adidas gave us. And on Nike Zoom Fly 6, we have a pretty traditional Nike waffle outsole pattern. As you can see, it looks just like a lot of Nike's other running shoes, just a lot of waffles on there. Now, how did traction perform in both of them as well as durability? I would say that the Adizero Evo SL, starting with that, I thought that the traction didn't perform very well, just very honest. I ran on a multitude of different surfaces when it was a little bit sandier, or there were a lot of loose impediments on the road. I felt like this very smooth continental rubber outsole did not grip the floor very well. Now, when I ran on very smooth, no debris on the asphalt type roads, which I mean, basically perfect conditions. Obviously, the continental rubber outsole didn't have any problems with that, but I was a little bit disappointed just because in previous models like the Adidas Adizero Boston 12s continental rubber outsole, I felt that that outsole was one of the best I've ever worn. So I was expecting kind of that performance on the Evo SLs, but unfortunately did not get that. Now, I didn't really run on trails with this shoe because it wasn't intended for that, but I could assume that it wouldn't do very well due to that very flat and thin outsole. So I would say traction for me in the Evo SL was definitely below average. Now, when it comes to durability, I think that that's something that the Evo SL's outsole still does perform very well in. I have about 50 miles on this pair of Evo SLs, and I would say that the continental rubber outsole, besides just aesthetically, it looks a little bit worn. From a durability perspective, I feel like the outsole looks brand new. It didn't look like it degraded at all in any of the high wear areas. So I would say kudos to Adidas for that part of the outsole, but when it comes to traction, if you are running in any less than perfect conditions, if you mostly run on the road with no debris and no little sand or anything, I think that the performance on the outsole is going to be perfectly fine for you. But if you're like me and you run on a lot of different surfaces, as well as maybe not the cleanest road sometimes, or maybe it's a little bit wet and there's some stuff on the road, I would say maybe steer clear of these, especially if you're going to do a lot of fast workouts or if you're really relying on the traction on your workouts. I don't think that this is going to be the best outsole for that. So overall, I would say durability, very good, above average, but traction, definitely below average on the Evo SL. Moving on to the Nike Zoom Fly 6 outsole, we have that traditional Nike waffle pattern, and I would say that the traction was around average. Ran same conditions as the Evo SLs, kind of like in all types of weather conditions as well as all types of terrain, and I would say that the Zoom Fly 6's outsole just flat out performed better from a traction point of view than the Evo SL. So if you are looking for a little bit better traction, I would definitely go with the Zoom Fly 6's. Now, when it comes to durability, I do think that the durability of this outsole is definitely not as good as the Evo SL's outsole. So that's something to keep in mind. But I will say that the durability of the Zoom Fly 6 is around average to maybe slightly below average. My pair has about 50 to 60 miles in them right now, and I can see that some of the waffle lugs are already starting to degrade. I think that's pretty much due to the fact that the rubber compound on this outsole I feel is a little bit softer than the continental rubber on the Evo SL's rubber. That's also kind of not scientific, it's just me touching the rubber. The continental rubber, actually I scratched that. I will say that the continental rubber feels soft on the Evo SL, but it just is a little bit more durable in my experience than the waffle pattern on the Zoom Fly 6. So when it comes to the Zoom Fly 6's outsole, I would say that durability is not as good as the EVO SL's, but traction is definitely better. So it is a toss-up between these two for the outsole. If you are running in perfect conditions or really clean roads, I would say that the EVO SL's outsole is going to work perfectly fine for you. But if you're like me and you run a little bit on everything, I would say that the Zoom Fly 6 overall's outsole was a better experience for me. Now, if durability is top of mind for you, then the EVO SL's outsole is definitely going to work better for you. But if traction is more of an issue for you, then I would say the Zoom Fly 6's outsole wins for that. So overall, I would say it's kind of tied. It just depends on what you're looking for in your outsoles as well as what conditions you're typically running in. Now, moving on to the main event of both of these shoes, the cushion setups for both of them. Now, we're going to go quickly over the specs. The EVO SL has a full-length Light Strike Pro with a pretty aggressive rocker, as you can see in the front. And there is a torsion or like a plastic plate just in the midfoot. It's like a midfoot shank. It's not really a full length plate. And you get 38.5 millimeters of stack height in the heel, dropping to, I believe it's 32.5 millimeters of stack height in the forefoot, or around 32 millimeters, something around those lines, giving it a 6 millimeter heel to toe drop. Now, in the Zoom Fly 6, you are getting a full length carbon fly plate by Nike, and you are getting a 42 millimeter stack height in the heel, dropping to a 34 millimeter stack height in the forefoot, giving it an 8 millimeter heel to toe drop. Now, that foam that you get in the Zoom Fly 6 is going to be a full length Zoom X on the top, and on the bottom, I believe it is Nike's SRO2 foam, which I honestly don't really know. I've never heard of that foam before, but that's going to be the setups of both of these shoes. Now, how did they perform? I would say that if you're looking at just stack heights or specs, it's kind of hard to get the full picture of both of these shoes. Now, even though technically the Zoom Fly 6 does have a higher stack height than the Adizero Evo SLs, on foot, they feel around the same amount of cushioning in my experience. Now, in the Evo SLs, I will say that why I didn't really like this shoe was because of stability reasons. Now, if you have perfect running form, if you also don't need much stability in your shoes, I think that this shoe is going to be very fun to run in. The Light Strike Pro is bouncy when it needs to be when you are running faster, and it's very soft when you're running a little bit slower. I didn't really notice the midfoot shank at all, but for me personally, I just need a touch more stability, especially if I'm doing long runs in this shoe. Now, when I'm doing fast, short runs, this shoe is perfect, and it feels really fun to run in from a cushion point of view. Now, versus the Zoom Fly 6, I think that there is a little bit of higher stack. Like I said, I didn't really feel it too much, but what I did feel in this shoe was a lot more stable than I did in the Evo SLs, and I also did feel that plate quite a bit. The plate definitely helped this cushion setup a little bit because Nike's setup, the Zoom X and the SRO2 foam, definitely did not feel as bouncy as the Evo SLs. I do have to give kudos to Adidas on their midsole, but the Zoom Fly 6 did get that bounce from the plate, as well as it did give that stability that I was looking for in the Evo SL. So I prefer this shoe for longer runs. I can still run pretty fast in them for shorter runs, but it doesn't have the same bounce or pop that, in my opinion, the Evo SL does. Now, it does have enough pop or enough bounce when I am taking them on longer runs, which is what I typically use this shoe for if I'm trying to lock in on a long run workout, or I just want to run a long run a little bit faster, as well as, maybe sometimes I'll run a little bit shorter but faster. I can run in this shoe. It just feels a little bit more stable and not as bouncy as the Evo SL. So again, it comes down to your personal preference, your running form. If you do need a little bit more stability and you're okay with giving up a little bit of bounce, I would say go with the Zoom Fly 6, especially if you're looking for a shoe that can do long runs in. I think that the Zoom Fly 6 really shines in that category for me personally. It has the stack height, it has the impact protection, it has the stability, and it still has a nice little bit of pop and bounce, which is why it was my shoe of the year last year. Versus the Evo SLs, I think it's kind of a fun, wild ride. If you're not looking for too much stability, if you're looking to go really fast and you want that little bounce, there is also a pretty aggressive rocker in the forefoot, which you can feel. So it's going to feel like it's propelling you forward even faster, versus the Zoom Fly 6's rocker, I think, is a little bit less pronounced. I think that you're going to love the Evo SLs, especially because the shoe just feels fast. And I think that if it was a little bit more stable, maybe if they gave a full length plate like they did in the Zoom Fly 6, it might take out a little bit of bounce, but it would be a little bit more stable in my opinion. I think that would really put this shoe to the next level. But with that being said, if like I said, if you're not looking for too much stability, you're looking for a fun, wild ride, and you want to run a little bit faster, I think that the EVO SL is definitely going to be for you. So overall, the cushion setups, I mean, for me personally, I do prefer the Zoom Fly 6. I am a heavier guy. And I do prefer a little bit more stability than in the EVO SL. For those reasons, I would pick the Zoom Fly 6 over the EVO SLs. But like I said, if you're running faster, you're running shorter runs, sometimes I do like wearing the EVO SLs because I'll get into the upper in a sec, but it just feels so lightweight. It feels bouncy and it feels fun to run in. It's just not the most stable for those longer runs. And last but not least, we are going to talk about the upper and fits for both of these shoes. Now, for the specs, I guess there's no really specs for both of these shoes, but they both use a engineered mesh of some sort. I think the Zoom Fly 6s is more of like a fuse, like a little plasticky fuse. The EVO SLs is also a little bit plasticky, but it's more of a thinner mesh or thinner plasticky material than the Zoom Fly 6s. So from a material standpoint, I think that Adidas's upper is just a little bit more lightweight. And it just feels like there's less on your foot and honestly feels very fast from an upper point of view. But the Zoom Fly 6's upper feels a little bit more structured, which does contribute to the fit, which I'll get into right now. The Zoom Fly 6 as well as the EVO SL, in my opinion, I think that the Zoom Fly 6 runs more true to size. I think my regular size 12 fit my foot really well. Heel lockdown, midfoot lockdown, as well as forefoot felt amazing in this shoe. No really break-in time necessary, and it just felt like there was a little bit more support when I was pulling the laces and I was really having the upper cinch down to my foot and really conform to my foot. I really enjoyed the fit of this shoe. But the upper, like I said, is a little bit more beefy than the EVO SLs, which is not a bad thing. It's still considerably lightweight for the amount of materials that they put on the Zoom Fly 6. I don't want you guys to think that this is a super bulky upper. It just is, maybe compared to the EVO SLs. But overall, I really like the upper. I really like the fit of the shoe. I felt very supported at all times, and the upper was still definitely lightweight, as well as providing that support and that good fit. Whereas the EVO SLs, this is where we ran into some problems. I will say that I prefer the EVO SLs materials from just like a lightweight standpoint, as well as just a feel on foot. It feels like you're wearing nothing, which is why this shoe is so fun to run in. And I think that the problems that I did have with the shoe was the fit. Even though the materials and the upper were very, I felt like not premium, but they just felt really good on your foot because they were so light and minimal. I did feel that the upper just didn't contain my foot very well, which is why I didn't really like running in the EVO SLs too much. I felt that even with my wider than average foot, this shoe just still had so much room in the forefoot, the midfoot. The heel lockdown was a little bit sketchy at times. I tried doing the heel lock with the runner's loop. I tried lacing them tighter. I tried just a whole bunch of things, and nothing really worked for me in the EVO SL. Now, I'm being a little bit dramatic. Like, you could definitely still run in them, but it just wasn't that one-to-one fit that I needed or that I really craved in a running shoe. So for those reasons, I have to go with the Zoom Fly 6 when it comes to the upper and the fit. I thought the Adidas EVO SLs, maybe if I went down half a size, these would have fit my foot a little bit better. I would have had better lockdown and stuff. But since I got my true size, I guess we'll never know. But yeah, for upper and fit, I would say I would have to go with the Zoom Fly 6. Although I will give Adidas credit for this upper. I think that this upper had a lot of potential. I just think that they need to work on their lasting or their lasts, and they need to work a little bit more on the fit of the shoe, because I think that if they dial the fit on the shoe as well as the stability in the midsole, I think that this would really be one of my favorite shoes to run in, period. So overall, if you are looking for a faster tempo shoe or you're looking for a long run shoe, as I mentioned kind of throughout all the aspects of both of these shoes, for me personally, I think that the Zoom Fly 6 wins hands down. I think it's just overall a little bit more consistent. It's not as fast and not as furious as the EVO SL, but I think it just hits the nail on the head on all aspects of the shoe. I think that it's not kind of like the best in any category, but it's really good in all of the categories, which is why it was my shoe of the year last year. Whereas the EVO SLs, I was heavily anticipating this shoe, and I was semi-disappointed, I'm not gonna lie, with this shoe. I thought that I was gonna be able to replace my Super Blast 2s with them. I thought I was gonna replace these with them, but when I did try them and when I did run in them and I put more miles on them, I just felt like there were two things that were stopping me from really loving this shoe, and that was the stability of the midsole. I think it's still still great for shorter runs, as well as the fit of the upper. I think that they can dial it in a little bit better than they did on this model. So that's going to pretty much wrap up my comparison. Again, I think both of these shoes are going to be good for you depending on your preferences. For the EVO SLs, I would definitely recommend trying them on in store just to make sure they fit your foot properly. And last but not least, we're going to also talk about pricing. So the EVO SL actually comes in at $20 cheaper than the Nike Zoom Fly 6 at $150. That's another reason I was so excited to test this shoe, because you get race foam, you get a cool look. I like that the stripes are kind of over the midsole, kind of like the Pro Evo ones. And overall, it just was a very promising shoe, but I just personally didn't really like running, especially long runs in this shoe. And I think that there are definitely things that they can improve if they make an EVO SL2. At $150, I think that if it fits your foot properly and you're not too worried about stability, this is a great running option. Whereas the Nike Zoom Fly 6 is a little bit more expensive, priced at $170. But I do think that it's well worth the money, especially if you're looking for a tempo shoe, you're looking for a marathon training shoe that's plated, that's maybe not as aggressive, or you don't want to train in race day shoes. I think that this is a great alternative. I also think that this could double as your race day shoes. Marathon, maybe it won't be the fastest race day shoe, but I think you can still run a marathon in these, as well as half marathon and below. You should be able to race in these, no problem. But overall, I think that the Zoom Fly 6 is just a little bit more consistent, a little bit better than the EVO SL at all categories. So that's going to be my choice of the video. I think that the Zoom Fly 6 wins, but let me know in the comment section down below if you guys have either of these shoes, if you're deciding between these shoes, and if there's anything that I missed. I would love to respond in the comments if you guys have any questions. So that's going to pretty much wrap up the comparison video for today. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you guys stay tuned for future reviews, comparison videos, as well as running videos. Thanks for watching. Peace.